Hey there, I'm Tara Alderete with MMI, and this podcast is all about debt and breaking the debt stigma. And we share inspiring stories from MMI clients that were able to pay off significant debt in a short period of time. But today we're going to do something a little different, and I'm really excited about it. On this episode, I'm talking to Naomi Peden, a housing counselor here with us at MMI. Naomi will be sharing her insight on how debt can affect housing options and, of course, strategies to overcome challenges. Here at Money Management International, we believe that financial challenges aren't meant to be faced alone, and financial wellness is a journey. On this podcast, we hear stories of people whose lives have been changed by MMI, and we also hear from the dedicated partners helping to make a difference. These stories are unique, personal, and inspiring. Stay tuned. We're sharing each guest's long story short. Naomi, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tom. I'm happy to be here.
I'm really happy to be talking to you. So before we jump in and get started, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your career with MMI, what you do, and how you came to us?
Sure, no problem. So I started at MMI. I've been with MMI for about a year and a half. I came over through a merger with CCCSMD. And the reason why, a lot of people ask me, why did you choose housing counseling? Oh, the reason why is I have such a passion for helping people. And by MMI being a national organization, I thought that is the place where I need to be in order to allow me to, reach my goals and help as many people as I could.
I love it. So Naomi, as a housing counselor, what does your day typically look like?
It's, a lot of calls, busy. We do get a lot of calls, but typically everyday people just trying to figure out how can they, navigate through their finances in order to make their lives better for them and their family.
So you're helping them overcome challenges and get their money right so that they can achieve that goal of homeownership.
Yes, I think the biggest obstacle that anybody faces is step one. Oh, you without the plan, it just seems so overwhelming, especially when you're going through something like that. Everything is overwhelming.
Sure.
So starting with step one by reaching out, getting that help, to help navigate you in order to get the plan so you know exactly what step one is. I think that's the biggest success story there is. Does
Yeah.
getting that step one.
You must enjoy this job so much, really getting to help people.
Yeah, I'm appreciative every day.
I bet you are. So, Naomi, typically, we said a little bit about this in the intro, but typically this podcast is focused on debt and really breaking that debt stigma. And we've heard so many inspiring stories about clients that have been able to overcome obstacles to pay off their debt and really change their financial outlook. And it's so
Mhm.
important because I think debt can affect people in so many different aspects of their life. So, from your perspective as a housing counselor, how can debt affect your housing situation? Maybe share some examples and things that you've seen.
We have to start from, the beginning of where it starts. Usually what happens is people are supplementing their debt for the increase of things.
Ah,
Their income doesn't support, the price of everything that they have.
sure.
So at some point, they become overwhelmed by it all. And I say the saddest thing that I've seen is people are no longer themselves.
Mhm.
You're so overwhelmed that normally if you met that person, you would say, oh my gosh, they're so nice. But now that you meet them because they have this serious circumstance going on with their, financial situation, they're just not themselves anymore. And that's the saddest part to me is and that's what I really, focus on is let me get you back to being you.
Sure. So, especially when you're thinking about achieving a big life goal like homeownership, I think for a lot of people, it can seem sort of maybe even overwhelming and out of reach for some people. And then to your point, if you add feeling not yourself because of the weight of debt or just the cost of living, that sort of downward spiral, it can almost feel impossible. So that makes a lot of sense to me. So, what advice would you give for individuals or families with rising debt?
Well, the first thing I would tell people is I always tell people stop. Just take a moment.
Okay.
Take a moment, breathe in, and then call MMI.
Okay.
Really just stop because the thing is, at some point, and this is what I tell all my clients, at some point, the decision will have to be made. And you want to be in that driver's seat making the decision. And what I mean by that is, I want to decide what I can reduce, what I can live without, other than having someone else decide for me. And the
Yeah.
only way that you can do that is really coming up with a plan and taking that first step.
So I love this idea of taking the first step because I think it's so important. Whether we're talking about what does my credit say about me? How do I get to buy a home? How do I get to start a budget? You are very right. I think just committing to that first step is so, so important. And then you just gain momentum from there. And it's wonderful.
Yep.
When you say take a deep breath and then call MMI, tell us a little bit about what MMI can do for clients that do have rising debt. How can MMI help?
Well, I think the first thing, and this is like to try to erase some of that stigma behind calling MMI. One of the things that I really want people to understand is that I feel like all the counselors here are here for a reason. We want to help people. So, just as much as we're helping the client, the client is also helping us because the client is also allowing us to achieve our dreams, our goals of being able to make a positive impact on someone. But when they call in, I think the CEO, Jim Triggs, said it the best is that no judgment, just
Yeah.
help. And that's what we bring to the table. We're going to walk you through, go over your income, your expenses together, create that budget, and give you an action plan that tells you here's step one. This
Yes.
is what you need to do. And I really think that really, moves people forward to where they're really excited about the process.
Wonderful. So it's real solutions without judgment and just help. And I love it. And I think that's one of the most important things for people to understand. And so, when I think about debt and asking for help and things like that, it's interesting because debt is such a common issue. I think it's one of the things that almost everybody might have in common. But yet we talk about it so very little. Why do you think debt is so hard for people to talk about?
Well, I think initially people may feel ashamed,
Mm,
because especially when you find yourself in over your head, where you
right.
find yourself drowning, you can't believe that you've let it get that far. So a little, a shame come with that, and you just don't understand how this happened to you. And then on the other hand, I also think is people, don't want to be or don't want to appear to seem as though they're not financial savvy, they're not knowledgeable with their financing. So they don't want that stigma on them saying, well, how didn't you know? And I tell people all the time, I love financial literacy. I've been doing a budget for over 30 years. I learn stuff still every day. So it's
Yes.
not that you're not going to wake up and know everything,
Right.
but it is a journey. And, the sooner you start the journey, the better you'll be.
Yes. Take that first step, right?
Take the first step. Yes.
So I did want to ask another question because I think sometimes you may have a different perspective, see different things as a housing counselor. So for folks that are looking to buy a home, we've talked about debt as a common obstacle that many people face. But are there any other fairly common obstacles to homeownership that people face, or stories that you might be able to share, things that people can watch out for to position themselves for successful homeownership?
Yeah, definitely. What I tell people is it's extremely important for you to know your own bottom line. It's
Oh,
just important for you to understand what you're comfortable with. And I'm just going to share my experience. For example, I like to feed the neighborhood kids. So in that, because I, do my budget and I include that in my budget. So I know that If a loan officer told me, oh, you can afford this amount of house with this monthly mortgage payment, I know that's not really realistic for me because of the things that, I hold dear. I don't want to not be able to feed the neighborhood kids just so I can have this amazing, a bigger house or whatever with a higher payment. So I think the first thing that anyone should look at before they even start looking at houses is starting with a budget, learning your bottom line, and knowing and standing on what you're comfortable with as far as a mortgage payment. Because you have to understand that this is a 10, 15, 20, 30, even sometimes 40-year commitment that
Yes.
you're making. And so you just want to be comfortable with the decision, with the final outcome.
Great advice. And I think creating a budget is so important no matter what you're doing. I say this all the time, and so it may even be a repeat, but I really think this way. When you're thinking about financial wellness, I always think about a puzzle. And, when I'm starting a puzzle, the first thing I do is put those corners together. You can't do that puzzle until you have your corners, and your budget is a corner. And then everything else falls into place. So, whether it's removing debt, whether it's buying a house, planning to own a house and still do all the things that you like to do, maintain, go on vacation, all those different things really starts with a budget. And that's something MMI can help with. I love that you said that.
Yes.
It's great advice. So I want to go back a little bit to breaking that stigma. We've talked a lot about this. How do you think organizations like ours here at MMI are working to break the stigma around debt and other financial issues? And how are you personally fighting that stigma?
Well, I think that being more open, things like this podcast, just letting people know, making them aware that there is resources that's available for you, that you don't have to walk this journey alone. And it's really important in choosing the right partner that you want to walk the journey with you, because you definitely want somebody, again, that has an understanding. I say all the counselors here, we've, we've had our own financial trials and ups and downs and lows. So we not only bring experience when we're counseling, but we bring that understanding and that compassion. We want you to succeed almost as if not more than you do. We want you to know that you can absolutely do this. Just take that step. It's when we don't never tell people it's going to be easy. We don't never say that because it's not easy, right? It's not
Right.
always a walk in the park. But we also tell people it's very much doable.
Yes.
You have it in you. You can do this. Here's the plan. Let's do it.
Gosh, Naomi, you're so inspiring. I want to build my budget with you. I have to tell you. And I know that our counselors are so wonderful. And every time I talk, to you, I just feel so good about the ability for people to do what they have to do to achieve their goals, no matter what they are. So, in your career of helping people achieve their financial goals, are there any stories that stand out that you could share? Of course, considering confidentiality and things like that.
Yeah. I've really been blessed with a lot of success stories. But the one that I say stands out the most is I received a call, out of the blue one day, and it was from a client that I had counseled a year before.
Oh,
And I couldn't make out the call. The call ended up being longer than what it should have because I just could not make out what they were saying. And the reason why is because they were literally crying so much. I was trying
oh,
to make out what they were saying. I didn't know if they was upset or, if something was going on, but they literally was calling me to tell me how much money they had in their savings account.
oh,
They could not believe it. They could not believe the initial call with them was due to utility cutoff.
oh,
And
okay.
now a year later, they're saying, I have this money in my savings and all my bills are being paid on time. But that conversation was very difficult. I still get emotional when I think about it. By the end of the call, we both were crying. But I was just extremely happy for them. But that's just how overwhelmed the emotions that they had at that time with thinking, look how far I've come in just a year.
Yes.
And that story just really sticks with me. I just be amazed, and it all started from that step one.
You have said so many great things today that I will think about. That step one is the most important thing, the most important step you can take. It is a journey, and you do not have to walk this journey alone. And then just really
Yeah.
thinking about not only the fact that that first step can lead to success in being able to save and pay off debt, but also achieve a goal like home ownership, something that you can start to use to build a legacy and pass down to members of
Hmm.
your family, your kids, other generations. It's just so inspiring and it's exciting. I love all the things that you've been able to share with us today. So, last question is just if you have any final pieces of advice or inspiration for any of our listeners today.
Let's get started on helping you become you again. And
Ah,
the way that we can do that is just give us a call. I think that is just really important. Just quickly, one of the another stories that I had is a client called me and just to let me know that they were on their way headed out to the park with their grandchild. And the reason why they called me is because initially, like I said, you're not yourself. When you're
right.
overwhelmed with debt, you're just not yourself. And so they had not been spending much time with their grandchild as they hoped. And so they just wanted to let me know, hey, I'm headed to the park with my grandchild
Ah,
because they felt that relief of that burden of that debt. So, by enrolling in the debt management program at MMI. So we have really good days where we have some amazing stories from my clients.
ah. Well, Naomi, thank you so much for being on today and for sharing those stories with us. I loved talking to you. And yes, just take that first step and pick up the phone and call NNI.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Long Story Short, brought to you by Money Management International. To learn more about our work and how we're helping people in all walks of life repay debt, balance their budget, and find lasting financial peace of mind, visit moneymanagement.org.